Welcome to our study, Exploring the Celtic World. Our playlist is developing. In this video, we said we're going to speak about the Phrygians, but we're also still thinking about the Trojans. So we're still exploring the Trojans while speaking about the Phrygians. But first we have to mention the Briges. So let's learn why we have to mention the Briges. This is according to Herodotus. As the Macedonians say, these Phrygians were called Briges as long as they dwelt in Europe. Okay, so that could be a significant point, where they were neighbors of the Macedonians. So we could also maybe think about that and come back to that. But when they changed their home to Asia, they changed their name also and were called Phrygians. Okay, so that's why we have to speak about the Briges. So if we could learn about the Briges, it would also help us understand, Phrygian. But there's not that much information out there on the Briges. But we will try look into them in the upcoming videos. Now, according to the Iliad, it says the Phrygians were Trojan allies during the Trojan War. So if we think about this, then we would be considering that the Trojans and the Phrygians are distinct. But I did come across this source, speaking about these terms, are they synonyms? Because in the Greek tragedy, Phrygian and Trojan being used interchangeably. But like we just read about, it says, although originally identified as two allied but independent peoples, we just read that, and it says you're speaking two languages perceived as different. So a bit confusing with the Trojans and the Phrygians. Are they distinct? Are these terms we can use interchangeably? So a bit of confusion. We'll try to see what we can learn as we go further in the video. I thought this was interesting. It says that the Greeks identified the Persians with the Trojans, both being Asian or Asiatic. So we're going to try to see if we can understand why the Persians are being identified with the Trojans as well. And this reminded me of another source of Herodotus, speaking about the origins of the Persian War. So the famous wars between Persia and Greece. It's very interesting, this account, because it goes all the way back to the Trojan War. And according to the Persians, the best informed in history, it was the Phoenicians that began the quarrel. So all that drama in the Trojan saga was it actually all begun by the Phoenicians. So a very interesting read. But I want to go down to this part where it speaks about the Persians. It says they traced to the attack upon Troy their ancient enmity towards the Greeks. So this is a bit strange if you think about it, because long before the Persian Empire, and we also have to remember that for a long time, we were told that Troy and the Trojans were just myths, they weren't really real. But if we can trust Herodotus, he's saying that the Persians would have believed in Troy because they're tracing their enmity towards the Greeks all the way back to the destruction of Troy by the Greek forces, and they see it as an invasion of Asia, and they identify with the Trojans, so being Asiatic. But is it more to it than just identifying as being Asiatic? That's what we're going to try to learn about by looking at the Phrygians, but just one aspect of their culture. But it's going to be a religious aspect. Okay, it says, in classical Greek iconography, Paris, a Trojan, is represented as non-Greek by his Phrygian cap. So that's the picture at the top. So they're wearing these caps, and it's called Phrygian cap. Let's go to a bigger picture so we can try see more clearly this cap. So Paris would have been wearing one of these caps in the depictions, but he's a Trojan. And now it's saying that because he's wearing this cap, it's identifying him as non-Greek. So that reminds me of our previous video we were thinking about, who were the Trojans, and it's very tricky to try and to work it out or to understand. And you might first think about the Greek assumption, because the Trojans and the Greeks both trace their descent to the Greek god Zeus from the Greek pantheon. But this page introduces that assumption, but then goes on a different path, considering a different connection. And maybe we can understand that now, because is Paris a non-Greek? Because he's wearing this cap, which is saying that we can imply that the Greeks wouldn't be wearing it if those who are wearing it would be described as non-Greek. But it's also worn by Mithras. So we're going to explore quite a few different things in this video. So Mithras, or Mithraism, was a Roman mystery religion, or a mystery cult. But it's inspired by Iranian worship. So the Zoroastrian religion, or the Persian, we could say the Persian form of worship. But it's quite interesting when we think about the equivalents for Mithras. So we have the Roman Mithras, but we see also the Persian Mithra. We have also the Vedic Mithra. So we should find connections between these religions, or these forms of worship, the Vedic, so Hinduism, and the Persian. So isn't that interesting? Because we're speaking about the Persians identifying with the Trojans, and here, because it's saying they see themselves as Asiatics. But if Paris the Trojan, is wearing the Phrygian cap, does that show he's a loyal follower of Mithras, or worshipping Mithras? So then you could see this connection with the Persian world and the Persian form of worship. But would it have been Mithras that Paris was worshipping? So we'll try also think about that. Okay, if we go down, we'll try to see how this could link into other videos we've been doing in the playlist about fire worship coming to Britain. Who's bringing the fire worship to Britain? This outside influence, and the Hittites taking us from Britain to India into China. These videos, and also our videos on Apollo. We were speaking about Apollo, because if we go to a bit further down, it speaks about Mithra evolving into a sun god. I think I've lost my my highlights. Okay, sorry, I thought I had it highlighted, but now I've got to find it just by reading it with you. Let's see if I can find it. It just says that he's identified with Apollo. Okay, so I think it's here. So it speaks about Mithra, evolving into a sun god, so sun worship, and it says it's conflated with the Babylonian sun god Shamash and the Greek deity Apollo. So it can get a bit confusing, because the Trojans were worshipping Apollo, but the Trojans are now being connected with the Persians, so the Persian form of worship and the Vedic, and we're seeing the Persians identifying with the Trojans. But the Greeks have Apollo in their pantheon, and the Trojans worship Apollo. So it is a little bit confusing trying to make sense of this, saying that, Paris was a non-Greek, by wearing this cap. But they, Apollo's in the Greek pantheon, and he's also worshipped by the Trojans. So we'll try to see if, things do become more clear as we go forward. But I just want to follow this this trail where the Persian and the Vedic is being connected to Apollo, and we'll see how it could tie together. Because if we go to Apollo and look at the equivalents, I think we can learn a lot by just considering these equivalents. So the Etruscan, the Hittite, the Egyptian, the Phoenician, the Celtic. I think that's saying quite a lot. We could probably just learn a lot just thinking about that. But we looked at the, one of our viewers helped us with the link to the Celtic. We have Belunus, a Celtic healing god, which is being identified with Apollo. Now Belunus, could be coming from Bel, or Beli, or Bil. And we know that from the Bible, the Canaanites were worshipping Bel. But we learned that Bil is a fire god, so it's fire worship. So if we try work backwards, and we learned that Bil is a fire god, so connected to sun worship and sun cults. So we go backwards with Belunus being connected with Apollo, and then Apollo being, we'll use their word, conflated with Mithras or Mithra. So then we should be expecting to see fire rituals in the Hindu religion, but also in the Persian religion. So they should all be linked with fire rituals. I'm not that familiar with Hinduism and Zoroastrianism. Difficult to say that one, but yeah, I think they are linked to both linked with fire rituals, but they're not going to be exactly the same forms of worship, but they are connected. We see this connection through with Mithras or Mithra. So before we finish the video, just think about what's happening here. That we're thinking about this Celtic world, but is it a foreign influence coming into these regions? And this worship, the sun cults, the sun worship, the fire worship, coming into Britain and into Europe, but who's bringing that into these regions? We did do the video speaking about, the Canaanites. Was it the Canaanites? But we also have the legends of the Trojans coming into this region. And we see now all these connections with the Trojans, with this Phrygian cap and how it links to the Vedic and the Persian religions, so the fire rituals. So I just want to read you this interesting source that I came across. I could link things together. It says, there is an artifact of extraordinary cultural significance representing the figure of an ancient Celtic mystic druid fire priest from the time of Etruscan era and inscribed in Etruscan script, bearing all the features and characteristics specific of the Brahmanic Vedic Aryan culture of ancient India. So here we have a link between the Celtic and the Vedic worlds with fire priests, and then we also see the connection with the Etruscan. So I'm not sure how the series is coming across so far. It's difficult to try see how this all links together, but if we think how this video where the Hittites took us from Britain to India, but then we also been speaking about the Hittites being compared to the Etruscans, and were the Hittites Hindus. It's like it's just slowly you can start to see how it's coming together. But I must say, I wouldn't say that it's perfectly clear yet, but we're just seeing these links: Celtic, Etruscan, Vedic. But we know that the Hittites are involved and the Trojans. I'm still very unsure about Phrygians. I must say, I'm not going to try to say anything conclusive here. Can you use these terms interchangeably? Are they distinct? The one thing I am thinking is maybe, to be called a Phrygian, could it be like an identity which could be connected to the religion and the worship? So if you're wearing the cap and you doing the rituals, or following Mithras, you could be called a Phrygian. So I'm not sure. Let me know if you have any knowledge on the Phrygians, anything you'd like to share. But there's just one more thing I would like to finish with. This figure, I was debating whether to show it or not. I don't want to make like create drama by speaking about it and then not showing it. So I think I will show it, but I don't really want to elaborate or speak about it. And I think hopefully you'll see why. It's not offensive or anything. Well, it is controversial. But let me show you, then you'll hopefully understand. Okay, so I might not be able to show it if I try, maybe if I zoom. Let me just try to see if I can zoom so you can see it in one without me scrolling. I don't know if I'll be able to do that. Now it's going to be quite small. Hopefully you'll be able to see it. Okay, so this fire priest, it's actually, also about the stance. So let me just zoom back in so you can read it. I'm not going to read it out loud because just a personal choice. You can see, what it's involving, and then hopefully you'll know why I don't want to speak about it. We may have to address it at some point because it could be significant for the study. So it's not like we avoiding it. I just don't want to go in that direction at the moment. So what I'd like to finish the video with is thinking about who the different nations wearing this Phrygian cap. So the Persians, the Medes, the Scythians, the Thracians, the Phrygians. So we'll try think about that as we go forwards. We had Mithras wearing the cap, but there's also other figures that wear this cap. So we have Phrygian Attis wearing this cap. Don't worry if you don't know all these characters from the mythology. So it's not like we have to try remember them all or learn them all. Just something interesting with Attis. So if we go to the page on Attis, there's a potential connection with the Trojans with the etymology. Let me just go to this page. We see these different characters called Attis, and then it says wrongly conflated with Attis, a Lydian solar deity. Let me just go to this part so you can see what they're saying. It says no connection to the god Attis. So to me these names do seem potentially connected because you kind of pronounce them in the same way. So this one I would say Attis, and this one I would say Attis, but they're saying we have to be careful that there's no connection. But it's just interesting because it's saying the Phrygian Attis, so he has a Phrygian identity, but we actually see this name Attis in the Trojan royal line. So we have Attis, a king of Alba Longa. Now I actually made a mistake in the previous video. I said Alba Longa descends from Aeneas, but Alba Longa is the city. So it was actually a city founded by Ascanius. Ascanius is the descendant of Aeneas. So yeah, I got that mixed up. But yeah, I'm just thinking about this because we're trying to understand this connection between the Phrygians and the Trojans. How are they connected? Are they different? Are they the same? We have this character in the mythology called Attis. Are these names connected? Because then we would have an Attis in the Trojan royal line, and there's also an Attis in the Lydian royal line. But yeah, maybe we don't want to introduce too much because we've already said a lot in this video. But I just wanted to show you that there could be a connection with the Trojans and the Phrygians, with even an Attis in the royal line of the Trojans. So I think that'll be it for this video. Really a lot of things to think about going forwards. In the next video we're going to speak about the goddess Venus. That's going to be the next video, but it's not going to be something completely different. We're still going to be thinking about the Trojans, the Phrygians, and the Briges, but just thinking about the goddess Venus. So thank you for watching this video, and hopefully we'll see you in another one.